world. And when you go to the next world, which the Talmudic sages definitely believed in, you'll get, points or credit or honor, or kavod for these mitzvahs. Some of them they don't seem to say, but these carry a lot of weight in both worlds, meaning they're holy between each other, between us. They create holiness between human beings and holiness between ourselves and God. So I think it's good to know these mitzvot. And while we're waiting for people to come in, there's another section that I want you to think about. And I'm going to ask you at the very end. And the rabbis also said that when you die in the hour of judgment, you're going to be asked 6 questions about the way you lived your life. And if you want to think about what any of those questions might be, I'm going to ask you to guess later what you think those questions. I thought there were 4, but when I did the research, they said there were 6. I only knew of 4, so I actually discovered 2 more when I was researching this to teach you. So there are 6 questions that it says in the hour of judgment when you come before the heavenly court. There's this idea that when you die, and this is not just in Judaism, it's in other belief systems, that there's you have a life review, and you basically look at your life, and there's a court or there's some kind of judgment based on your life that you get to see as well. So, but now we're going to start. I think it will start because we only have 45 minutes. So I'm going to share my screen and show you, and then we're going to talk about them in detail because Judaism is a very funny religion. They don't just tell you to do something like, they don't just say, be a good person, for example. They say, give charity. But they don't just say, give charity. Then Maimonides says, well, there's 7 levels of charity. And then they tell you all the different levels. So Judaism doesn't just tell you to be a good person. It often offers you how to be a good person. And this is what you should do, or here are suggestions, or, kind of rules that we think you should follow in order to actually fulfill the mitzvah of this particular act. So they don't leave anything to chance in case you might get it wrong. So I want to share my screen with you. And where is the one? It's the 10 super mitzvahs. Here it is. I'm going to open this one to start with and bring it down. And this is what it says in the Talmud. These are the things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of this world, or the world, the fruit or the results or, the impact in this world, while the principle remains in the world to come. In other words, you get some of it here and even more in the next world, which is the way they call heaven. And here they are, and then we're going to go into them. Honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all. Well, but they're saying if you study Torah, you will learn all of these. So if you didn't know them, if you study Torah, yes, that will help you to learn them. But we're studying the Torah. We're going to be studying it this way. So the first one is honoring one's mother and father. Now, does anybody know the Hebrew of how you say that? It's in the 10 Commandments. It's the 5th commandment, by the way, which is very interesting because a lot of commentators say that the first 5 commandments of the 10 are considered between humanity and God, and the second 5 are between humanity, between people. The second 5 start with do not kill. The second 5, do not kill, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, and do not covet, basically. So we see that those are obviously between humanity, people and people, man and woman, person to person. The first 5 are considered between God and us. And the fifth one on the first five is honoring, no, the fourth one. The fifth one is Shabbat. The fourth one, wait. The fifth one is honor, no, the fourth one is Shabbat. The fifth one is honor your father and mother. So what does that mean? It's so important, but the word is kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. And the word kabed in Hebrew comes from the word kavod, which means heavy. And it can be a burden to care for your parents. It can be a burden to honor them. There's an awareness of this. And it says, what constitutes honor? If you look on this side, it's the commentary says, one must provide them with food and drink, clothing and garments, to conduct them home and take them out and rise before them. So I think that's very interesting, because to conduct them home and take them out, I think we're familiar with people who put their, and later it says, if you can't take care of them yourself, you can hire help. If they can't live with you, you can pay for a nursing home or an assisted living home. You can help them with that, but you have to take them out. You can't just dump them there. It's basically, they're saying, conduct them, take them home and take them out. So just putting someone there and never visiting them is not considered honoring your parents. They need to be visited. You need to take them out for a meal, for a walk to the sunshine or something. And you must provide them with their needs cheerfully. If one should feed them daily the most delectable foods, but do so with ill grace, if you give them everything, but you begrudge it, it's not considered, you get divine punishment. It's not considered the mitzvah. And this is, there's an example. If one makes his father do hard labor, but the intention is good to save him from a worse fate, and he appeases his father by showing him that his intention is good, he inherits the world to come. And there's a famous story about how in some kingdom, they were conscripting people and sending them to war. And so this son took his father and made him a laborer, and he was considered essential, and he saved his father's life. So even though he made him work and do hard labor, it was to save his life. So that's where that comes from. And now there's some extremes here. To what lengths should duty of honoring parents go? Even if they were to take his purse full of gold and cast it into the sea in his presence, he must not shame them, manifest grief in their presence, or display anger. Okay, well, do we accept that? I don't know. Some of these are very extreme. Of course, I think they were written by sages who were all parents. You know what I mean? They were older and they were parents. So they really go to some lengths. But here, if you look, it says when not to obey. You cannot obey if they tell you to do something wrong. Like some people say, well, I've heard this on talk. I happen to be, I love listening to like advice talk shows. I love to hear people, call up.
Very nice note to Lori, by the way.
Like Dr. Laura, I like to listen to her. I don't like her politics, but sometimes people say, well, because I
read it. I have it.
Parents. Okay.
I have a copy of it.
Whoever's talking, maybe you'll put on.
You wrote a nice letter.
We're hearing somebody's, put on your mute if you're talking to someone else, please. But you're not allowed to honor your parents and do evil acts or perform something wrong. And there's a whole other thing. If your parents are abusive, you do not have to honor them. You do not honor parents who abused you, that they lose their honor from that. So that's not included. It says here, if a parent orders their child to transgress a positive or negative command, or even a command from the Torah or rabbinic origin, the child must disregard it. So you cannot listen to that. So you honor your parents, and this is interesting. You honor your step parents too. Well, here's the details. It says, one must honor and respect his stepmother during his father's lifetime and his stepfather during his mother's lifetime. It is proper that one honor and respect them even after the death of one's own parents. So you have to be kind to your step parents if, they're not abusive, if they're kind to you. Okay. And I mean, there's a lot of this. It says here, and this is in the Talmud, if the mind of his father or mother is affected, one should make every effort to indulge the vagaries of the stricken parent until God will have mercy on the affected. But if the condition of the parent has grown worse and the son is no longer able to endure the strain, he may leave his father or mother, provided he delegates others to give the parent proper care. So even in Talmudic times, you're allowed to have help. If you can't do it, if you can't endure it, you're not supposed to sacrifice your life for your parents. You're supposed to do your best. And if you see your parent doing something wrong, you are supposed to call them on it. But the way that you call them on it, it says here, number 7, when a child sees his parent violate the Torah, he must not say to him, you have violated a command of the Torah. He should say, Father, is it not written in the Torah this way? So, you're seeing that, Father, isn't it written you shouldn't be cheating on your taxes? So you ask them that way. And also, finally, I think this is really important. Although children are commanded to go to the aforementioned lengths in their relationship to their parents, the parent is forbidden to impose too heavy a yoke upon them, to be too exacting with them in matters of pertaining to his honor, lest he cause them to stumble. He should forgive them and shut his eyes, for a parent has the right to forego the honor due him. So that is saying you don't ask for too much. You don't impose such a yoke that it's such a burden on your children that who knows what will happen to them. So this is all in the realm, all of these laws just for honoring your parents, your mother and your father. And it's interesting, in the Torah, it's written twice. Once honor your father and mother, and once honor your mother and father. It's written in 2 different places, so that you shouldn't think one is more important than the other. Are there any questions or any comments anybody has? Okay.
I just want to thank you for this.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, hold on. Let me just. Should have taken my phone off the hook. Sorry. Okay. So the next one is deeds of compassion. And deeds of compassion are doing good deeds and being compassionate. The word in Hebrew, everybody ever heard of that Yiddish expression, rachmanis? Have rachmanis? That is from rachamim, which means compassion. And the root of the word rachamim, which is compassion, is rechem, which means the womb, the where you carry your child, the womb. So it's when you think of compassion, it's nurturing, it's encompassing, it's warm, it's protective, all of the qualities of a womb. And the rabbis say that this is probably one of the most important mitzvahs of all, but not just to have compassion, engage in deeds of compassion. So that's the thing about Judaism. You must do something. You can't really just be Jewish. You have to do Jewish. Doing Jewish is, we show our Judaism, we practice our Judaism, we live our Judaism. So you engage in deeds of compassion. And we know there are, many, feeding. Actually, there was a wonderful short story, and I don't know if it's based on truth. It's by Israel Zangwill, who's an English Jewish author, about this idea that you're always supposed to feed. It's a big thing to invite the poor to your wedding, to show that you're a compassionate, generous person. So when you have a wedding, you always have a table. You go out, you invite poor people, you have special tables, and they come and eat. And it was a story about these poor people, these beggars, who felt that they didn't like the food they were getting. And so they went on strike and they wouldn't come. And there was this very wealthy man, and they basically blackmailed him because they said, we're not coming. And that would be a big, shame, embarrassment if he couldn't show off that he had tables for the poor at his daughter's wedding. And so, I don't know, they got like the best treatment because they realized they had power, because this rich man wanted to show how compassionate he was. It's interesting I mean, maybe you know this. I didn't know this till very recently that Hillcrest Country Club, which is a very expensive country club and founded by Jews, and to join. But one of the things you have to do to be a member is prove that you give a lot of philanthropy. That's one of the requirements for membership, that you are a philanthropist, which I thought was a very interesting thing. I mean, it's a Jewish country club, and you have to show I give so much to philanthropy, because it's a value that we don't even realize maybe. It's so Jewish, it's so integral into who we are. So engaging in deeds of compassion is very important, and we can do small deeds or big deeds, and they all have a huge impact. Okay, so now there's arriving early for study morning and evening, which I interpret this as educating ourselves about Jewish things, learning something about Judaism. You know, unfortunately, I have a lot of friends who say, I'm not that Jewish, or I'm not into Judaism, whatever, because I hated Hebrew school. And a lot of people only have a pediatric understanding of Judaism. And for me, arriving early just means being eager, being interested. You don't have to literally go there every morning and every night, but the more you study Judaism and the history and the texts and the teachings, it's fantastic, and it just enriches you. And so they're saying this is considered a mitzvah, to be knowledgeable about who we are, where we come from, what we believe. When I teach adult b'nai mitzvah, my first question, if you've been in my class, you know this, is if a Martian came down and met you and you told them you were Jewish, and the Martian said, oh, you're a Jew, what do Jews believe? Half the people have no idea what to answer. What do Jews believe? I mean, do you know what Jews believe? Because a lot of people say, oh, being a good person. Well, yes, but there's more to it. And they don't have an answer. And that's our first class in every adult b'nai mitzvah course, is what do Jews believe? And then we go through it. And then I ask them like a month later, because I want them to be able to answer that if anybody ever asks. And even knowing that would be fulfilling this mitzvah. Okay, dealing graciously with guests. So hospitality in Judaism is a huge thing. And having them, we get that from Abraham. It's in the book of Genesis. He would sit in his tent and he would have all four sides up, so he would be able to welcome guests. And, you know, it's a Middle Eastern thing, because Muslims also are very, that's a very big value for them, hospitality. And I wanted to share something with you. Oh, I guess I can't share them. Well, I can come back. Yeah, hold on. And let me share something else with you with the hospitality, because there's something very funny where it is dealing graciously with guests. So here, I love this. It says that you should open your door and invite people in. I read in another place, it says, when people visit you, you welcome them, you make conversation, but you don't wait too long to serve food, because you don't want them to be hungry. So you serve food, and you, when they stay, after they leave, you actually escort them out, and you walk like a half a block with them when they leave. You don't just stand at the door, but you actually escort them part of the way. But I love this thing that I wanted to read to you that I thought was great. Conversely, I'm going to stop. Also, if you know, like in Orthodox synagogues, it's a huge mitzvah. If there's a stranger who walks in on a Saturday to a synagogue, you're always invited to lunch to somebody's house, or people can show up at a synagogue, and it's a huge mitzvah to bring them home for Friday night dinner. And I knew a woman who was an actress. She told me the story, and she was in the road show for Les Miserables. And they went all over the country, and she was the only Jew in the whole cast. And she felt very lonely. I mean, she liked everyone, and every town they went to on Saturday, we're talking in the South or in Tennessee, Kentucky, whatever, she would find a synagogue and go there. And she'd say, I'm Jewish, I'm from New York, or I'm from LA, I'm in the show, I don't know anyone. Every single week she was invited home to someone's house for lunch. Every place she went, because this is such a value of having a guest. And it says during the Middle Ages, there was actually in every small town, there was a guest house. So if a stranger came to town, you'd say, oh yeah, you'll come for dinner, but here you can sleep. You could actually claim a place to sleep. But I like this. Conversely, an inconsiderate guest in a hospitable house is condemned. When hosts feel, you're not supposed to make guests feel awkward. Guests are obligated to be grateful for the labors of the host. And you're supposed to say a special thank you during the grace after meals. But it says here, I love this. The meaning is that a guest should not impose on their host or extend their visit longer than 3 days. In Midrash Tehillim, it says, on a day a guest arrives, a calf is slaughtered in his honor. The second day, a sheep. The third day, a fowl. And on the fourth day, he is served just beans. So in other words, time to leave. We fed you for 3 days. And you know, they say a fish and a guest start to smell after 3 days. That's another expression. I wonder if it comes from this. So I wanted to just share that with you because I thought that was very cool. Okay, I want to stop this share and go back to the other share for the 10 super mitzvahs. Okay, so share. Hello. Oh, share here. Okay. Visiting the sick is a huge mitzvah. And the Talmud says, when you visit somebody, you remove 1/60th of their pain just by visiting. And they say that you can save a life by visiting somebody because they may be very depressed and feel that no one cares. And if somebody visits them, and they say if you can't visit, especially like now, even a phone call can make all the difference, that they'll have hope and they'll, try to get better. The Talmud says you should go and visit a person. Let's say they're in the hospital or sick in bed at home. Don't come too early because they might be tired, not ready. Don't stay too long. Because you don't want to exhaust them. And don't come too late. Don't stand up while they're sitting, so they have to look up at you, but sit down next to them. Don't bring any bad news. Only give them good news and, something that will cheer them up. Bring them a gift if you can. Some food is very nice. It's called Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick. And there's actually an institution in LA called Bikur Cholim. And it's amazing. It's another Orthodox organization. I mean, we actually have meal trains at Wilshire Boulevard Temple. If somebody's really sick, especially in the schools, they'll arrange meals for them for a month. But Bikur Cholim, if you're an Orthodox person in a hospital and you can't get kosher food, they will show up not only with food, but with a little refrigerator so that you can keep kosher food there. And all free for the sick person. People donate for this. So visiting the sick is considered one of the highest mitzvahs because it's compared to, and also if there are 2 people and one person's getting a lot of guests and one isn't, you go visit the one who isn't being visited much because they need it more. And also, according to the Chafetz Chaim, who was a great scholar, important people are obligated to visit more than regular people like rabbis or like the mayor or whatever, because that really makes a difference and sets an example to the rest of the community. When you do it, people see you doing it and they realize that they should be doing it well. So another one is providing for the wedding couple. This is hilarious in that I found an ad in Israel where there are poor couples who can't afford weddings. If you want to perform a mitzvah, you can donate to someone's wedding. You can donate money for someone and celebrating, not just providing and helping them with money, but celebrating with them, singing with them, enjoying with them is also considered a mitzvah. It's not just doing things for people who are suffering, but the celebration of a wedding. And the word for Hebrew in wedding, one of the words, is kiddushin, which comes from like kiddush or kaddish or kadosh, holy. A wedding is really considered a sacred ceremony, and participating in it is a huge mitzvah. Dancing, singing, in every way for a wedding is one of the super mitzvahs.
Excuse me, Susan, get some water, dear.
No, it's Yom Kippur. Okay, accompanying the dead for burial is considered a huge mitzvah because it can't be reciprocated. But I include this really meaning not just going to the funeral, but comforting the mourner. Not just accompanying the dead, but comforting the mourner is so important. And I was just thinking about this recently. After somebody dies, everybody, calls, or they show up, or they come to the shiva or the funeral or whatever. But really, it's 2 weeks, it's a month, it's 6 weeks, it's 2 months later when you've moved on. And anyone who's lost a very close loved one knows it gets worse for a long time. It doesn't get better. It's actually, you miss them more as time goes on, because in the beginning you're in shock. And so that is the time to really reach out to a mourner or someone who's lost like a month later and say, how are you? Can I take you out for lunch? Or, reach out to them, because that's especially couples who have been married for like a really long time. It's like a part of you is gone. You're so lost. My own father, after my mother died, after 40 years of marriage, he was just so lost. He didn't know what to do with himself. And thank God there's 4 children, and he came and lived with each one of us. He would just, for like a year, he'd go from kid to kid for 6 weeks or 2 months, because it was devastating to just be home by himself. So when we think about this mitzvah, it is accompanying the dead, but it's also comforting the mourner. So being devoted in prayer, I think, means having gratitude, looking at the world, realizing that there's so much in here, so many gifts. I've talked about the daily miracles when I hurt my back, and how suddenly just being able to walk without pain, I was so grateful for. But the word gratitude in Hebrew is hakarat hatov, which literally means recognizing the good, recognizing what's good. So when you're devoted in prayer, to me, it's just saying thank you. And the Talmud, of course, says, the rabbis, you should say 100 blessings a day. Just imagine if we went around saying 100 blessings a day. And they write a lot of those blessings. But the sense, I think as you get older, you become more grateful, for smaller things. And just being aware of how much we have and being grateful, I think, is what being devoted in prayer means too. And making peace among people. So that is hard and really important to, in some way, broker some kind of peace between people who are at odds. And I think it starts, with children. I talked on Rosh Hashanah about my teaching the 3rd grade. I was a rabbi there. I taught them once a week, 4 different classes. And the biggest strife for these 3rd graders was fighting with their siblings. A lot of them had a terrible time. And we talked a lot about how to not fight, how to make peace, how to figure out a way not to be at odds with each other. So I think it's something, it's learned. It's not something we automatically know. And it starts at a very young age. And brokering, it says you're not allowed to hold a grudge, and helping people get over their grudges. Another way to make peace is on Yom Kippur is to apologize, is to approach people where we have hurt them and there are bad feelings, and to start with yourself and other people and the people that, you have the rift with, and ask for forgiveness and own our part in it. There was this great theater piece from the Jewish Women's Theater about a woman who she was at odds with her ex-husband. I loved it. It was really funny because she called him her husband, her husband was her husband, and how her daughter was getting married and they were going to have to see each other. And she was very angry at him. And she went to the rabbi, and the rabbi said, she said, what can I do? I can't stand him. He was horrible, blah, blah. And he said, I think you should apologize for whatever you did wrong. And she said, I didn't do anything wrong. He said, there has to be 1%, 2%. She said, okay, I'll apologize for the 2%. I don't agree with this, but I'll do it. So she called him up and she said, in her mind, it was 2%. She says, anything I might have done to cause this rift or to, have hard feelings between us, I apologize. And he didn't say anything. He said, okay. And then she was like, oh, fine. Didn't do anything. And about a week later, he called back. He said, I'm sorry. Me too. Anything I did, and I know I did a lot. I thought about it. I really appreciate what you said. I apologize too. And it ended up that they became friends and they had a beautiful wedding because she was willing to take the first step. And then in the end, she says, this apology thing, I'm a fan. That was the last line of the piece, but it was a true story that sometimes we have to take the first step, even if everybody's a little bit culpable when there's a rift. And the fact that she did that started the healing. So these are the 10 mitzvahs that we have, that if you do these, your life's going to be much more enriched. And this is what the rabbis. But now I want to ask you, or anyone, you can either tell me, or I'm going to get rid of the share here so I can see you all. If you have an idea of what any of the questions would be when you come before the heavenly court. And I'm going to look in the chat. I see there's some chat here. Do you know that this commandment, which question is this? Do you think that this commandment is to be knowledgeable generally rather than related to Jewish knowledge? I think wisdom of any kind could be considered learning. Yes. I think Jewish knowledge, but wisdom, gaining wisdom, I think is very important and can be considered a super mitzvah. Okay, does anyone have any idea like to take a guess what those questions are? Claudia, are you raising your hand or
I was actually trying to write in the chat, but I can just tell you. Have you engaged in Torah study?
Have you engaged in Torah study? Yes. Did you hasten to learn Torah? Meaning, did you learn ethical? I think it means, did you learn and then practice ethical behavior? Because if you learn it and you don't do anything with it, I don't think that's part, but that is one of them. Anybody have another idea of what one might be? The first one, the very first question is incredible. Yes, Nancy.
Have you been the best self you could be? The best,
but a little more specific that's good. Yes. But
I'm quoting in miserably an old saying about, when you get to heaven and they asked, I wasn't as good as the rabbi said, it doesn't matter. Were you the best, Nancy Berman that you could be?
That's right. There's a famous story about a rabbi who was a great chassid and righteous man named Zusia. And when he was dying, he was like very upset. And they said, what's wrong, Rabbi Zusia? And he said, when I get to heaven, God, they're not going to say, why weren't you like Abraham? Because I'm not Abraham. Why are you not Isaac? I'm not Isaac. They're going to say, were you Zusia? Were you the best Zusia you could be? But the first question is mind-boggling to me. Were you ethical in your business practices? Were you ethical and honest in your business practices? And I have this theory that they don't ask you things unless it's a challenge or people are having a problem with it. So that must have been a problem. They have to ask, they say that's your number one question. There must have been a lot of people with questionable business practices, because why would they even put that on the list? I'm going to share the list with you right here. It's the 6 questions. Okay. Did you conduct your business affairs honestly? Did you set a time, special time for Torah? Yes. Did you do all you could do to have children? And to me, this also means, were you a mentor? Did you help the younger generation in some way? Did you do something for the next generation? Even if you couldn't have your own children, or you chose not to have your own children, did you nurture another person or group? Did you yearn for world redemption, which to me means, did you have hope? Did you believe another translation is, did you hope for the Messiah? And so it's like, when Jews are almost commanded to have hope. We're really actually optimistic people. We do believe that there will be a better time. So did you remain optimistic that things would get better? Now, this is very interesting because of the question before. These are two new ones that I found. Did you deal deeply in matters of wisdom? Wow. What does that mean? Did you think and analyze? And then did you learn critically? These are really interesting to me because it means, did you, like, when you heard something, did you just didn't say, okay, that's the way it goes? A lot of people in a lot of religions, well, it's written here, that's how I'm supposed to do it. As opposed to, well, let me think about this. Does this make sense? Or how can I make this work? Or do I accept it? I mean, did you learn critically, and did you deal deeply in matters of wisdom? There is a lot of wisdom through the ages to study and learn from. Greek, I mean, Maimonides was a huge scholar of classical Greek wisdom that he incorporated into his teachings. And so it's not that Jewish, except for the Torah study. The rest of them are really for anyone in terms of, what are your values? How did you live your life? Did you think deeply? Were you honest with people? If you study Torah, you're going to, but there's no ritual question. Did you keep kosher? Did you go to synagogue? Did you have a bar mitzvah? Were you circumcised? Nothing like that. It's all kind of behavioral or philosophical. So these are the questions. These are things to think about on Yom Kippur. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they would like to make? Let me stop the share so I can look in the chat. If there's any chat. No. Does anybody have?
I'm Karen.
Hi, Karen.
I wanted to say something regarding, did you yearn for, I lost it. Did you yearn for
redemption? For
Redemption.
the Messiah.
Yes. But I think it's not just a question of yearning. It's a question of doing. What did you do to help create a better world?
I agree with you. And that's part of yes, absolutely. And we know there's so many mitzvot about doing that. And the Haftorah for Yom Kippur is Isaiah saying, I don't want your fasts. Don't bother me with your fasts on Yom Kippur. I want you to clothe the poor, feed the hungry, clothe the poor, take in the stranger. That's the kind of redemption or teshuvah I want from you, because the whole context of the Haftarah is you say, we're fasting, and God's not accepting. And God's saying, oh, you're fasting, you're hypocrites. You fast, but you're cheaters, you're robbers, you're not kind people. So who cares about your fast? That's not the kind of fast I want. So that's in Isaiah, which was written in 800 BCE. So nothing is new under the sun. But I agree with you, Karen.
I want to ask one more question. Does intent have something to do with the acceptance of a mitzvah? In other words, if you invite the poor to come to the wedding, but it's kind of a phony deal.
Okay, you froze, but I understand your question. That's tricky. And I'll tell you something interesting. In the Torah, when God, God gave, when God gave the Torah to the Jewish people in the book of Exodus,
Is that not in?
you keep freezing, Karen, but I totally get your question. If you're not really sincere about it, you're just going through the motions, does it count? Is basically what
Yes.
yeah. However, in the Torah, when the Jews got the Torah in the book of Exodus, they say,
Like if you're doing it again,
you know what, I can't, not coming through to me for some reason. So let me just finish this. It says, Na'aseh v'nishma. They get the Torah and they say, we will do and we will listen. Not we will hear you and then we'll do it. We'll do it and we'll hear you. So the commentaries say, why is it, this is so reversed? Why do they say we'll do it and then we'll hear you? Because in Judaism, there's this idea that just doing it will get you there. You don't believe in it, do it anyway and see what happens. You don't believe in giving charity, give charity. And when you see the gratitude of the person, you're going to be like so moved, you're going to be shocked. You don't believe in it, but do it, try it, do it first. So there's this idea that your intention is, it's great if you have intention. And there's this whole thing called kavanah, which means, you know, real intention when you're praying, when you're doing something, you really are sincerely involved. But it seems that you don't necessarily need that. It shouldn't stop you from doing it. Do it anyway. And after you keep doing it, you may be moved. You may suddenly have the spiritual experience that you're supposed to have. Because we're all about doing. Did anyone else have a question or anything? No? Well, I want to wish you a happy or a good Yom Kippur. At 3:30, there is a panel with Rabbi Nickerson, Rabbi Simons, and Rabbi Leader. I'm at home, so I have to go over to the synagogue now, so I can see you.
Oh.
Susan, you have a couple questions in the chat. Do you want me to tell you what they are?
Yeah, let me see.
So from Sam Pablo Montes on Facebook, why 613 mitzvot, 365 negative commandments and 248 positive questions?
Okay, so, you know, we don't know. That's how many there are. And are there really that many? I think we're not even sure. But some people say it's for all the bones and all the tendons in the body. It sort of is a number of things in the body. But it's that more that they counted them. And then they said 613. And there's also this idea that a pomegranate still has 613 seeds in it. And it's a symbol. But it's more like there are 613 because that's what we counted. It's not like God said there have to be 613. So it doesn't have that much significance.
Okay. And then somebody, Abby Ghost asked, how do we deal with the notion of having lots of children when modern non-Orthodox Jews don't have so many?
What does that mean, having lots of children?
I think the commandment that you talked about was, did everything to have children.
Did you try to have, well, that's a child. You know what I mean? You could have a child. Did you try to have children? Did you try to continue the Jewish people is really what's it about. It's not about any number. And certainly birth control is in the Talmud, and you're allowed to even have an abortion under certain circumstances. So it's not about having an endless number of children. It's about just trying to continue the Jewish people through a child or two. So there's no number.
I have a question, Dan. It seems that in the Orthodox group, have as many, have lots of kids. I mean, you know, they interpret the mitzvah as like that you should have continuously have children. You know, 12, 13, whatever.
They say, okay, that's them. I mean, actually, there's this idea of called hidur hamitzvah, which means like embellishing the mitzvah. So if it's a mitzvah to have one or two, how much more to have 10, you know, or whatever. But it's not in any text, and it's not even in any Talmud. It's just a tradition that they have decided. And I actually read a very interesting, I have this collection from my mother of the History of Civilization by Will and Ariel Durant. And I was one day was looking up Jews and I was just looking up Jews and everything, trying to see what they said about Jews. And they talked about Jews in 200 CE Alexandria, which was actually Greek at that time. It wasn't Egyptian or Muslim, it was Greek. And they talked about the Jews there, and they said that the Jews in Alexandria had less children than most and loved their children more and educated their children more. But they didn't have as many children, but they seemed to love them more, and the family seemed to be very important. And this was in 200, they say AD or CE. So I caution people to think that the Hasidic or the ultra-Orthodox way of life today is the way Jews lived over the last 2,000 or even 3,000 years. They didn't live that way at all. Hasidism started in like 1800, and Jews lived totally differently in all different parts of the world. And in ancient Israel, they were, I think, a lot more lax in terms of like observance, like the ultra-Orthodox, because one of their things is that they believe every single mitzvah, and it's a beautiful idea. It's a Kabbalistic idea. Every single mitzvah brings sparks of light into the world. So they're all about doing as many as possible, but it's a philosophy that I'm bringing sparks, I'm lighting up the world. So they tend to do a lot. That's not the way that most Jews lived over in Sephardic Spain in 1400s. They did not live that way. They were very modern. They observed the holidays, they observed everything, and they totally intermingled with the society. And certainly in other places, even in Sfat, in Israel in the 1600s, I found out that they were very egalitarian, and there were women Kabbalists and women mystics. And yes, they believed in a lot of things, but women were quite equal in many ways there. And there were actually a woman rabbi in Mosul, Iraq in the 1600s. So don't judge Judaism or say, oh, this is the way it always was, because it wasn't. Just like it isn't today in America. The diversity, I think there was always this kind of diversity.
Rabbi, may I ask you a question, please?
Yes.
The question about at the end of life when we go to heaven, what I think is, don't you think it's interesting that it had nothing to do with like if you're circumcised or all that, but it had to do with how you treated other people and how you lived your life. It didn't say anything about religion. It said about how you felt and how your intention and what you did in your life.
Well, that's Jewish religion, a lot of it.
I know it is, and I'm proud to be. I just became a member, by the way. I just want to tell you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. I wish you an easy fast, and may the gates close with blessings for all of you. Shana Tova. And thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Barbara. I like your hair, Barbara Curry. I like your hair. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Your smile is beautiful too. I love your smile.
Thank you for your interesting presentation and your answers to the questions we had to ask.
I like your question about intention because it's really important. Intentions are important.
Oh, thank you. I did want to continue that. For example, if you do good deeds to get into